Hi, I'm Tiffany, and welcome to Towering TBR. I am so excited to be recommending 50 plus queer books just in time for Pride Month, although you can read these all year round. Because there are so many, I'm going to just give a brief description, and then if there are any videos that would give you more information, I will be linking those in the description. So if any of these catch your eye, make sure to check those out. I read nearly all genres, and so if you are looking for a specific one, they will be bookmarked and you can skip to whatever it is you are looking for. All right, we've got a lot, so let's get started. The first category I'm going to start with is general, realistic, literary, historical fiction. Anything that would fit into that category. The first I'm going to recommend is Christadora by Tim Murphy. The Christadora is a building in New York, and we follow an ensemble cast throughout time. In the 80s section, we do deal a lot with the AIDS crisis, and I just found it really fascinating. The next is The Prettiest Star by Carter Sickles. This is about a gay man who gets AIDS and goes back home to die, and we see some people genuinely love and take care of him. It's a heartbreaking story, but one that was really important. Southernmost by Silas House. A pastor deals with a backlash in his church after he houses two gay men after a disastrous flood. I can't talk about historical fiction without talking about Sarah Waters. Sarah Waters is one of my favorite authors. I have read all 6 of her books, and they're all historical, and 5 out of the 6 have lesbians. She is known as the lesbian Dickens because of the way she writes. It's very flowery and descriptive, and I would recommend any of them. Fingersmith is still my favorite, and the one that doesn't have any queer rep is The Little Stranger, though it's an excellent book in its own right. Now that I've read all 6 Sarah Waters books, would you be interested in kind of a where to start with Sarah Waters? Let me know in the comments if you are interested. Small Rain by Garth Greenwell. This is a gay man who has a medical crisis during the lockdown and pandemic, and he is in the hospital contemplating life and art and the love of his life. It is exquisitely written and one of my favorites from last year. The Heart's Invisible Furies by John Boyne. We follow Cyril over his life, and we get to see snapshots every 7 years. He is growing up gay in Ireland when it is illegal to be such. And I loved this character. He is super flawed, but so well realized. Tin Man by Sarah Winman. This is about a man, and he thinks about the love of his life from when he was younger. He was in love with a man, and he is now married to a woman, and we get some excellent bisexual representation. Under the Udala Trees by Chanela Akparanta. This is a coming-of-age story set in Nigeria right before the Nigerian Civil War back in the 60s. Our protagonist, Ijeoma, is sent away, and while she is away, she falls in love with another girl. It is also illegal to be gay in Nigeria, and we see the risks she takes to be her authentic self. How to Be Normal and How to Be a Movie Star. This is sort of a duology by TJ Klune. The first, How to Be a Normal Person, focuses on Gus, and Gus is falling for an asexual hipster man and decides to use the internet to try and figure out how to woo him, essentially. It's super funny, and I think it was the first book I read with asexual rep. The sequel follows another of the friends from the friend group, and I absolutely love this friend group, and it's quite fun and joyful, a break from a lot of the trauma that you normally see in queer stories. Brokeback Mountain by Annie Proulx. This is a short story about 2 cowboys who love each other, but due to the times that they live in, are not allowed to be together. It's only 55 pages, but it really packs a punch. I still haven't seen the movie, though. If you've seen it, do you think it's worth it? Anyone's Ghost by August Thompson. This was my absolute favorite book from last year. It's a coming-of-age story about 2 boys working a summer job, and they kind of become everything to one another. It's a very obsessive and intense relationship that they have. Isaac's Song by Daniel Black. This was a recent read. Isaac is gay, and his homophobic father is not very supportive, And so Isaac goes to therapy to kind of work through some issues, and I thought it was excellent. The Safekeep by Yale Vanderwooden. This is another recent release that I've read. It is a torrid relationship between a girl and her brother's girlfriend, and lots of secrets come out. The Lion's Den by Iris Mwanza. This is about a young lawyer in Zambia who defends her client who has been accused of engaging in acts against nature, aka being gay. And this is also set in 1991 when the AIDS epidemic is running rampant and a lot of people blame the gay population for it. It is still illegal in Zambia to be gay. And the last I'm going to include in this category is The Secret Lives of Church Ladies by Disha Filial. This is a short story collection, and some of the women love other women. It really stands out to me because none of the short stories are a dud. They all hit, and that is such a rarity. I would definitely recommend. Okay, let's switch to science fiction and fantasy. The first I want to recommend is The Second Mango by Shira Glassman. This is about a young woman who becomes queen and decides to take her bodyguard on a search for her to find a girlfriend. They uncover a sinister plot, and their journey turns into a rescue mission. This is very sweet and very cozy. I would definitely recommend if you like those types of stories. The Fifth Season by N.K. Jemisin. This is a science fiction and fantasy story. The world is essentially ending, not just the world, but also for a woman who finds her son murdered by her husband. She goes on a journey to rescue her daughter and also to avenge her son. The magic system is really interesting, and we have a prominent trans character as well as a male-female throuple. Throuple is 3 in the couple. I would definitely recommend the entire trilogy. The House in the Cerulean Sea and the sequel, Somewhere Beyond the Sea by T.J. Klune. These are some very cozy fantasies with a male-male romance. Linus is a social worker and he is sent to check on a magical orphanage to see how the kids are faring and to keep tabs on the caretaker as well. These are very sweet and very cozy. The Space Between Worlds by Micaiah Johnson is an epic space opera. There are parallel universes, and a person can only travel to a parallel universe if their doppelganger is no longer alive. And she is allowed to travel to 372 of the parallel worlds because her counterpart is dead in all of them. Why are so many of her counterparts dead? Is somebody targeting her? And if so, why? A Psalm for the Wild Built and its sequel, A Prayer for the Crown Shy by Becky Chambers, is a wonderful, cozy science fiction story. We are following a non-binary tea monk. It is their job to go around to different towns, offer tea and a listening ear, and along the way, they meet a robot who is questioning what humanity needs and how he can best meet those needs. It is very sweet. While I'm talking about Becky Chambers, though, I should also mention A Long Way to a Small Angry Planet, which is her first book and a full-length novel. It has a wonderful female-female romance, and Becky Chambers is just an amazing writer. I would definitely recommend anything she writes. Finna by Nino Cipri is a slim little novella about Ava and Jules. They have recently broken up, but they work at an IKEA-like store and are sent to go find a lost customer who has wandered through a wormhole. It is a scathing critique of capitalism and has some very absurd different worlds. The Tainted Cup and A Drop of Corruption by Robert Jackson Bennett. We are following a Sherlock and Watson duo as they try to solve really complicated mysteries in a fantastical world. Din is our Watson character, and he is just casually bisexual. It's just pretty much queer norm, and I love that for him. Some Desperate Glory by Emily Tesh. A girl grows up in a space cult and leaves the only home she's ever known in an attempt to rescue her brother who has just been given a deadly mission. This went in a lot of directions I was not expecting, and I really enjoyed it. Her Majesty's Royal Coven by Juno Dawson. A group of friends take an oath to protect England as part of Her Majesty's Royal Coven. As they are adults later on, they've gone in separate directions, but come together to face an existential threat. Book 1 ended on a cliffhanger, so you're going to want book 2 nearby. And book 2 ended on a cliffhanger, so when the third book comes out in July, you'll probably want to snap it right up. I know I do. Legends and Lattes and Bookshops and Bone Dust are both by Travis Baldree. Legends and Lattes focus on a female-female romance as the couple are opening a coffee shop in a fantastical world where they don't know what coffee is. And Bookshops and Bone Dust is a prequel where we follow Viv, who after getting hurt in a fight has to convalesce in a seaside town, and she makes friends along the way, and it is just wonderfully cozy. This next one is not cozy at all. Chain Gang All-Stars by Nana Kwame Adjei-Brenyah, one of my favorites from a couple of years ago. This is a dystopian book imagining a future where convicts are allowed to fight to the death, gladiator style, against other convicts. And if they can continue to win for 3 years, then they will be finally released. We are focused on 2 women, Hurricane Stax and Loretta Thurwar. Loretta Thurwar might be the first woman to ever be released. She is just a few weeks shy of her 3rd year of fighting. These women are a couple and they face a lot of extraordinary challenges. It is a deeply depressing comment on the prison system, and I can't recommend it enough. Lastly, in the science fiction and fantasy category, I want to recommend The Vanished Birds by Simon Jimenez. This is an epic standalone space opera focused on a young boy. No one knows where he came from or what he is capable of. This story is not told in a linear fashion, which can sometimes be confusing, but once it all starts to come together, it is absolutely wonderful. I am trying to grow my channel, so if you are liking these recommendations and would like more in the future, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks. Alright, let's switch to some classics. I'd like to recommend A Single Man by Christopher Isherwood, which was written in 1964 and is considered a modern classic. We follow a man through one day in his life. He has recently and suddenly lost his partner and is really kind of at a loss for what to do. It is less than 200 pages, but it packs a punch. Another classic I'd like to recommend is The Well of Loneliness by Radcliffe Hall. This was initially published in 1928, but it was banished due to obscenity. This follows a young woman, Stephen, who dresses and acts like a man and dates women. It's called a lesbian classic, but it could actually be more closely a trans novel. They might have just not had the verbiage for that back then. It is pretty sad, but Stephen is a memorable and excellent character. Okay, let's switch on to mystery and horror. I don't read a lot of horror, but I have 3 that I'd like to recommend. The first is Bury Your Gaze by Chuck Tingle. This is a satirical horror focused on a screenwriter, and he is told that he needs to kill off one of his gay characters in his TV show. He refuses, not wanting to create more queer trauma, but to create more queer joy. However, once he refuses, strange things start happening, and monsters from his previous show are somehow coming to life. I found this campy and fun, though it is definitely a little bit gory. Plain Bad Heroines by Emily M. Danforth. This is a historical gothic horror. We start in the first timeline, and we're at an all-girls boarding school in 1902. 2 girls die in tragic circumstances, and the school is shut down. In our modern timeline, they are going to be making a movie about those 2 girls and decide to go back to the dilapidated boarding school to shoot the scenes, and spooky stuff happens. Is this place haunted? What is really the truth? There is lots of sapphic love in this one. And The Book Eaters by Suni Dean. This is a fantastical horror about people who consume books. Women are relegated to fairy tales or cautionary tales, while men are allowed to eat any type of book. A woman gives birth to her son and discovers that he is not a book eater, he is a mind eater. Once he eats the mind of a person, he then has all of their knowledge and all of their memories. However, once they are eaten, they are just empty shells. She and her son go on the run to save him from certain death, leaving corpses in their wake. Switching over to romance, I'd like to recommend The Romantic Agenda by Claire Kahn. This is a romance with asexual representation. Both Joy and Malcolm are asexual, and Joy is in love with her best friend Malcolm. However, he's just found the love of his life, Summer, and they all decide to go on a little vacation, and Summer brings her ex, Fox. Fox and Joy decide to fake date to see if it will make Malcolm jealous, but it's a romance, so of course they fall for one another. Both Joy and Malcolm are asexual, but they really explain that it's quite a spectrum. What one person might be comfortable with is not necessarily what another person who's asexual would be comfortable with. Delilah Green Doesn't Care by Ashley Herring Blake. Delilah goes back home after her estranged stepsister asks her to photograph her wedding. And when she goes back, she meets one of her stepsister's friends and they start dating. Their romance really flourishes, but also face realistic obstacles. Claire is a single mom. I enjoyed this realistic conflict because one of the reasons I struggle with romance is some of the situations just feel too contrived. There are two other in this series focused on other people in this friend group. Astrid Parker Doesn't Fail and Iris Kelly Doesn't Date. Again, those are also female-female romances. I did DNF Astrid Parker Doesn't Fail because it's a hate-to-love romance, and that's a trope I don't like. But if you like it, I think you'll really enjoy the book. And I definitely recommend Iris Kelly Doesn't Date, especially for the wonderful anxiety rep. You probably noticed I don't have a whole lot of mystery or romance options to recommend. These are my least read genres, so if you have any favorites, definitely recommend them in the comments below. Okay, let's switch to illustrated stuff. That's going to include graphic novels, graphic memoirs, manga, and comics. The first I'd like to recommend is The Magic Fish by Trung Le Nguyen. This is about a young Vietnamese boy and his mother as they've moved to the United States. They decide to read fairy tales to practice their English, but the young boy has something he desperately wants to communicate to his parents. He is gay, and they don't understand English well enough, and he doesn't understand Vietnamese well enough to communicate this. So instead, he finds queer fairy tales in order to be understood and accepted by his mom. I loved these fairy tales, some I'd never heard of before, and I loved his determination to be authentically his own self. Nimona by N.D. Stevenson is my absolute favorite graphic novel. We follow Nimona, who is a shapeshifter, and she decides she wants to be the villain's sidekick. She is constantly coming up with dastardly schemes in order to get at the hero. However, the villain and the hero have a complicated backstory. Netflix adapted it into a movie a couple years back, and while there are some changes, I would highly recommend that as well. It is excellent. Bingo Love by T. Franklin is another great queer comic. This is a second chance love story focused on two girls who were dating in the 1960s, but because of their religious families, they are broken apart and come back together 50 years later. While I am sad that all they have is their ending, I'm so glad that they got to be with one another, and the art is gorgeous. Girl from the Sea by Molly Knox Ostertag. This is N.D. Stevenson's wife. I love that they're both creative. A teen girl falls into the water and bumps her head and is rescued by another girl. It is such a cute meet cute. And they start to have a relationship, but someone has secrets, and will that change how they feel? Mamo by Sass Millage is another gorgeous graphic novel focused on a young girl. Her grandmother has recently died, and she comes back for the funeral. Her grandmother was a witch, and now that she is dead, magical stuff is going awry. So the young granddaughter, who is also a witch, has to put things back in order with the help of a girl who she fancies. My Brother's Husband by Gengorah Tagame, Volume 1 and 2. This is my absolute favorite manga. We follow a Canadian man, Mike, who has recently lost his husband and travels to Japan, where his husband was from, to meet his estranged twin brother and his niece. During the 2 volumes, we get to learn more about the dead man and hear stories from both perspectives. This is absolutely heart-wrenching, but I love it, and I've read it so many times. I absolutely recommend. Snapdragon by Kat Lee is a middle grade graphic novel. We follow Snapdragon, a young girl who finds some baby possums after their mother has died. She decides to take the baby possums to the local witch and builds a wonderful relationship with her. We learn more about Snapdragon, the witch, and how their stories are intertwined. The last illustrated work I'm going to mention is Genderqueer by Maya Kobabe. This is a graphic memoir of what it was like for them growing up and questioning their gender identity and coming out as non-binary. I found their story quite eye-opening. It is one of the most banned books, so in my eyes, it means it's pretty much essential reading. I have a couple of middle grade and YA I would like to recommend. The first is Jamie by L.D. Lipinski. Jamie is a non-binary kid in their last year of elementary school. Next year, they're going to be going to middle school, and there is only a girls' school and a boys' school, and they aren't either. This highlights their struggle, but it ends on quite a happy and hopeful note. One of the things I love about middle grade, it's way less depressing usually. Elataway by Darcy Littlebadge is a YA novel about an indigenous girl who has the ability to speak with ghosts. Her cousin comes to her and tells her that he has been murdered and that she needs to find the person responsible. So, with the help of her friend and her lovely ghost dog, she sets out to find out who killed her cousin. Elataway is asexual, part of the queer alphabet I don't see very many stories about, and her story is so compelling. I don't typically like YA, but this was top-notch. For poetry, I only have one poet that I'm going to talk about. I think the best way to consume poetry is to listen to the poet speak their poems aloud. So I would definitely recommend the audiobook for Don't Call Us Dead by Danez Smith. They are a non-binary, black, gay person who is also living with HIV. Their stories are full of extreme violence and incredibly traumatic, but their creations are just so impactful and moving, I can't recommend them enough. They actually have 4 poetry collections out. The only other one I've read by them is Homie, and I would also recommend that, though Don't Call Us Dead is my favorite. Okay, let's switch to our last category, which is nonfiction. I would recommend Me by Elton John. This is his autobiography. He divulges lots of gossip and salacious details about his very indulgent life. He ultimately sobers up, meets the love of his life, and adopts some children. If you're even a teensy bit interested in Elton John, I would definitely recommend it. This book is narrated by Taron Egerton, and he does a fabulous job. Taron Egerton is also the actor who plays Elton John in the biopic, which I think is called Rocket Man. I would also recommend that. I thought that was a great movie/musical. All the Young Men by Ruth Coker Burks is her story of becoming an AIDS activist in the 80s and 90s. It all starts out when she's at a hospital visiting one of her friends, and she sees nurses and doctors refusing to go into a room. She finds out that it's because there's an AIDS patient who is dying, and she decides to go in, sees his emaciated body, and knows he doesn't have long, and she sits there and holds his hand so he is not alone when he passes. This unexpected visit turns into activism for gay people, specifically with HIV and AIDS, and her story is just so impactful and moving and amazing, and I am so glad she exists. There was so much stigma with HIV and AIDS that many families wouldn't even accept the bodies of their dead relatives. She was so impactful in so many lives, and this is a story I won't soon forget. How We Fight for Our Lives by Saeed Jones. This is his memoir of growing up gay and black in the South. He is a poet and his writing is very beautiful, but I will let you know it is quite explicit, so if you don't like reading stuff like that, I wouldn't recommend this one for you. 10 Steps to Nanette by Hannah Gadsby. Hannah Gadsby is a non-binary, autistic, queer comedian from Australia, and they talk about their decision of deciding to quit comedy is what launched their comedy career. While becoming a household name, they are struggling quite a lot with their mental health. Their story is equal parts wounding and hilarious. If you like dark humor, you should definitely check this out. They narrate the audiobook themselves, and I would highly recommend it, especially because they have a very thick Aussie accent. Oh, and if you like their humor, definitely check out their comedy special, Nanette, on Netflix. Sticking with the theme of queer autistic comedians, I would love to recommend Strong Female Character by Fern Brady. Fern didn't find out that she was autistic until she was already an adult, and she looks back at her childhood through the lens of understanding now why she was so different. She also worked as a sex worker, and her honesty is just really refreshing and funny. She also has a strong Scottish accent, and I would recommend her audiobook as well. And if you like her, definitely check her out on Taskmaster. She's in season 14, and she's absolutely hilarious. And the last book I'm recommending is called Disco Bloodbath by James St. James. This is about James's time in the 80s and 90s as a club kid. He partied and did drugs with a man called Michael Alleg, and Michael Alleg was convicted of killing his drug dealer. This story is outrageous and salacious. They made it into a movie called Party Monster, which I absolutely love. Michael Alleg is portrayed by Macaulay Culkin, and James St. James is portrayed by Seth Green. I definitely recommend the movie or the book, especially if you like gossipy or true crime stories. There you have it. I have given you 50 plus queer recommendations and even threw in some adaptations for free. I can't believe I didn't make this video sooner. There are so many more that I plan to read, and I will do an update when I have lots more to suggest. However, I'd love to hear your favorite queer recommendations. Please recommend your top favorites down in the comments below. I look forward to chatting with you. Thank you so much for joining me. Bye.